Howdy everybody. Welcome to the week 3 introductory video for ethical decision making in wealth and risk management at the Texas A&M University School of Law. I'm Jack Manhire, and I apologize this video is about a day or two late. Something took me out of town, but I'm back, and I'm here at in what we call the war room. It's the conference room of the School of Innovation, and it's where we meet and have our really big ideas, which is why we always have Legos in the conference room. You never know when an idea might strike. So let's talk a little bit about what to expect this week. Some of you have probably already watched the lecture, but I want to stress some divergent thinking about group decision making, which is what we're talking about this week. The lecture video that I go over talks about what I think is the obvious elements of individual decision making versus group decision making, and you're thinking of individual decision making as a decision that you can make on your own, and then group decision making as something that affects the group, and you need to use a group because there are stakeholders involved, etc. And that's all really, really important, and you should definitely stick with this. This isn't a substitute for that, it's just a supplement. I also want you to think about the value of group decision making for some decisions that might be considered individual decisions. And I'm going to use an example from my life and from my research very quickly to show you what I mean. So if some of you have read any of my research, which I'm sure none of you actually have, I do some work on financial markets and financial market movements, and I also have a small venture on the side in which we trade with some of this stuff, trade in financial markets. But here's the thing, there's a big difference between the mathematics of making trade decisions and then the humans part of the decision that usually ends up screwing it up. For example, if we have some decision to make some type of trade, and you will only do a trade if in fact you have element A, B, and C, and you should probably make sure that A, B, and C are there, or you don't make a trade. But in reality, the reality of the trade is that you end up with A, B, but not C, and you say, hey, well, that's close enough because I'm in the moment, and believe it or not, when you're doing this, just like when you're gambling, the emotions can take over. Well, I have found that while this is typically, this could be seen as an individual decision because it's very, very simple, A and B and C, I will engage in some type of group decision making for my trading, because when I see A and B and not C, on my own, I might actually make a decision to trade when I shouldn't. But if I have at least one other person looking out and confirming that all of the A, B, and C elements are met, then it will help me to decide that this is not a situation in which a trade should be made. So I'm using group decision making for an issue that clearly could be done individually, but I recognize my own human biases. And if you've seen the video already on implicit bias, you realize that bias isn't just the way we typically use the word. I'm using it in a way that talks about our own neurological preferences or the shortcuts that our mind takes. And believe it or not, when we're looking at something like this, you can say, well, it's clearly A, B, or C. You shouldn't be confused, Jack. I understand. But our own biases sometimes talk us into taking decisions that we look back even a minute later and say, why the heck did I make that decision? So it might come to pass where you're in a situation, especially in risk management, although it might be in wealth management too, where you might want to take advantage of group decision making for that reason, because it's the best thing to do, okay? So now I want to also talk about a few administrative issues that we've seen so far. And I hear some people talking in the other room, so I'm going to go shut the door and I'll do something as far as fading the video in and out. Okay, so administrative issues, these are things that we've been looking at in your assignments, in your weekly assignments, as well as your discussion boards. And we made a list, and I wanted to make sure I covered them all for you. The first one is when we're looking at the reflective journals. Most of you are doing pretty well. You're doing pretty well, but there is some divergence, and let me try to give you some hints on or some advice and guidance on how to make this maybe a little bit less challenging for you. We will work on putting together some type of model answer. The answer is a model answer only in that it covers some of the issues that I'm going to talk about, and we'll try to get that to you just as a guide. But the few things that I really want to stress is, number one, it's important that you organize your thoughts, okay? Break these down into paragraphs. Break your thoughts down into paragraphs. Rambling sentences. We had a few turned in where the entire reflection was one long paragraph, and clearly it was hard to figure out where we were in the thought process. So please organize your thoughts and break them into paragraphs. If there is a prompt, which means that something in the assignment says, prompts you to discuss something specifically. For instance, in week 1, it was to discuss the readings of folks like Schiltz, O'Grady, etc., or it might talk about referencing specifically a reading or a video, or it might talk about name one value that you have from your worksheet. Please address the prompt. Believe it or not everybody identified one value when the assignment clearly said identify one value. So any prompts like that are in the assignment, do one of two things. Either make your first sentence in your journal something about that, so we know that you're addressing the prompt, or dedicate 3 or 4 sentences to it so we realize where we are in your thought process. Okay? There is no minimum or maximum. We did that on purpose because we didn't want to restrain you. There is actually one assignment that you'll get to later on that talks about a 400-word limit, but for the most part, there's no minimum or maximum here. But this is more than just one long tweet. I mean, this is graduate school, okay? Even at the undergraduate level, I'd be demanding this. I want more than just one long, essentially one very, very long tweet, like I said. It's not about length, but it is about not having just random thoughts or stream of consciousness that you're simply recording because you're trying to get it in before the deadline. That type of rush job and disorganization is definitely apparent to us, and we're grading accordingly, as you'll see. Okay, so please spend some time on that. The thoughts just aren't complete. Okay, 3 more things I want to talk about. Number 1, we do not need to see your worksheets. Let me say it again. We do not need to see the worksheets. If I'm sending you a worksheet, it's because I think it might help you as a tool, but it's a tool to, again, assist in writing the reflective journal. The reflective journal is what we need to see. Okay? The tool, the worksheet, the handout, that's for you. That's for you to keep in your file for maybe later on when you might need something like that. But we don't need to see it. And some people were a little confused and actually turned in the quote-unquote worksheet as if it were an assignment, but didn't turn in a reflective journal assignment. Okay? You need to turn in the reflective journal assignment. The worksheet's just a tool for that. Okay? Next, if there is a prompt, as I talked about before, please address every element of the prompt. It's how we're grading the assignments. If, for instance, it says to reference something like O'Grady and Schiltz, and you don't reference O'Grady and Schiltz, the grade is going to reflect that. That would be a missed section. Okay, and you're going to get less points for that. And the other thing is, this is just a minority of you, but we are seeing some late assignments. Remember that that Wednesday night before midnight, the first discussion on the thread is due, and then everything else, including 2 more posts on the discussion board and your reflective journal assignment under the additional assignments, that's all due before noon Central Time, noon Texas time, on Sunday, and we are taking off 10 points per day that either a discussion is late in being posted or something that needs to be turned in is late in coming in. So 10 points per day. These are each 50 points, so you can see how that can really start to affect it. All right. Again, not a problem for most of you, but I do want you to be aware of that. All right. Those are the big things. Those are the big things I want to address administratively. I hope you have a really, really good week. Remember that my office hour, my virtual office hour, is on Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m., again, Texas time. You click on a link and it takes you to the chat room. We have some issues, IT issues with the microphones and the screen sharing and things like that. Some of you have told me that seems to happen almost with every class. I put in an IT ticket for it. I hope it gets better this week. But as an alternative, there's always a phone number that you can call, and we can at least talk in a conference call setting in case you do have any questions. Okay? So, sorry I had to rush through this and that I didn't get to do anything fun and creative and me falling off of personal mobility devices or anything like that. But I did want to get this information out to you as quickly as I could, and I will talk to you soon. Ciao.